Imagine a universe where humanity is seen as nothing more than primitive insects, crawling on a backwater planet that barely registers on galactic maps. For 10,000 years, the Zephyrian Empire has crushed every civilization that dared to resist their iron rule. Their armadas have turned proud worlds into glass. Their weapons have silenced the songs of entire species, and their emperor sits on a throne built from the bones of conquered kings. But they made one critical mistake. They assumed Earth would be just another easy conquest. What they didn't know was that humans possess something no other species in the galaxy has ever developed. Something so dangerous, so unpredictable, that would shatter their empire's foundation and rewrite the very rules of galactic warfare. This is the story of how a species that couldn't even reach their own moon without strapping themselves to controlled explosions brought the mightiest empire in the universe to its knees. This is the story of why, after today, no alien species will ever again underestimate the tiny blue planet in the outer rim. This is the story of how Earth said no to an empire that had never heard that word before. And minute, Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy stood before the massive viewing portal of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the small blue planet rotate slowly beneath them. His 4 arms were clasped behind his back, and his scaled face bore the expression of mild annoyance that had become his trademark when dealing with primitive worlds. This was supposed to be a routine operation, nothing more than a quick demonstration of Imperial power to another insignificant species. The planet below looked peaceful, almost boring. Swirling white clouds danced across blue oceans and green-brown continents. No defensive satellites, no orbital platforms, no energy shields protecting major population centers. The electromagnetic signatures suggested basic nuclear technology at best, and their crude metal ships couldn't even achieve faster-than-light travel. It was pathetic, really. Sub-Admiral Veltar, Kethvar called without turning from the window. "What is the status of our demand transmission?" The smaller Zephyrian officer approached, his footsteps echoing in the vast command chamber. "Sir, we broadcast the standard conquest ultimatum to all population centers on the planet 47 hours ago. The deadline for unconditional surrender expired 12 minutes ago." Kethvar's mandibles clicked in what passed for a chuckle among his species. "And their response?" "That's unusual, sir. They responded immediately, but not with surrender documents. Instead, they broadcast something they called rock and roll music directly at our ships, followed by what their linguists tell us was an extremely creative collection of profanity in over 200 different languages." Veltar paused, consulting his datapad. "The final transmission was quite short, sir. Simply 2 words, 'Come on.'" The Admiral's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of confusion. In 10,000 years of galactic conquest, the Zephyrian Empire had received many responses to their ultimatums. Desperate pleas for mercy, offers of tribute and resources, angry defiance that quickly crumbled into begging. But never had a species responded to the threat of total annihilation with an invitation. "Perhaps they don't understand the gravity of their situation," Kethvar mused. "Show them." The command was relayed throughout the Armada. 300 Imperial warships moved into attack formation above Earth's largest population centers. Each vessel was over 2 kilometers long, bristling with plasma cannons that could melt mountains and particle beam weapons that could crack continents. The smallest ship in the fleet carried enough firepower to sterilize entire hemispheres. As the Armada arranged itself, Kethvar studied the intelligence reports on the species below. They called themselves humans, and by every metric the Empire used to evaluate threats, they should have surrendered the moment they detected the fleet. Their weapons were primitive projectile-based systems that couldn't even penetrate Imperial armor. Their fastest ships moved at a fraction of light speed using chemical propulsion. They had no energy shields, no plasma weapons, no understanding of exotic matter manipulation. What they did have was puzzling. The reconnaissance drones had detected massive underground complexes on every continent, all connected by a network of tunnels that seemed to serve no apparent purpose. There were also strange energy readings from their polar regions, consistent with large-scale industrial operations, but the humans had no technology that should require such massive power draws. "Sir," Communications Officer Zixanael announced, "we're receiving another transmission from the planet." "Put it through." The main viewer shimmered and displayed a human male sitting behind what appeared to be a wooden desk. He wore a simple black suit and had the calm demeanor of someone discussing the weather, not the imminent destruction of his species. "Greetings, Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy," the human began, somehow knowing exactly who he was addressing. "My name is Director Chun of the United Earth Defense Council. I understand you've given us an ultimatum to surrender, and I wanted to personally thank you for the generous 47 hours of preparation time." Kethvar's scales rippled with irritation. "Preparation time? Human, you seem to misunderstand your situation. Surrender now, and your species will be allowed to serve the Empire as laborers. Continue this pointless defiance, and your world will be reduced to molten slag within the hour." Director Chin smiled, and there was something in that expression that made the Admiral's combat instincts twitch with unease. It wasn't the smile of someone facing death. It was the smile of someone holding a winning hand in a game their opponent didn't even know they were playing. "Admiral, I think you're the one who misunderstands the situation. You see, in the past 47 hours, we've learned quite a bit about your empire. Your ships, your weapons, your tactics, your history of conquest. Very impressive, truly. 10,000 years of galactic domination is nothing to scoff at." The human paused and picked up what looked like a primitive paper document. "However, you seem to have made your plans based on some faulty intelligence. You see, you've been watching us for several weeks now, correct? Studying our technology, our defenses, our military capabilities." Kethvar said nothing, but his silence was confirmation enough. "What you observed," Director Chin continued, "was what we wanted you to observe. Tell me, Admiral, in your 10,000 years of conquest, have you ever encountered a species that deliberately appeared weaker than they actually were?" A chill ran down Kethvar's spine. In the Empire's long history of expansion, they had indeed encountered many species. Some fought with desperate courage, others tried to hide, a few attempted negotiations. But none had ever actively deceived the Imperial scouts about their true capabilities. "Impossible," the Admiral hissed. "Our sensors are the most advanced in the galaxy. We can detect any technology, any weapon system, any defensive capability." "Your sensors are indeed very advanced," Chin agreed. "They can detect any technology you know about. But, Admiral, your empire has spent 10 millennia conquering species that developed along predictable technological paths. Energy weapons, force fields, spacecraft built from exotic materials. You become very good at detecting and countering those things." The human stood up and walked to a window, looking out at something the camera couldn't see. "But humans, Admiral, we're a bit different. We don't always take the obvious path. When we realized we weren't alone in the universe, we didn't just build bigger guns and stronger shields. We got creative." "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm telling you directly. Admiral Kethvar, you are not looking at a primitive species with no defenses. You are looking at a species that has spent the last 70 years preparing for exactly this moment, using technologies your scientists never imagined and tactics your strategists never encountered." The transmission cut out, leaving the Imperial Command Center in shocked silence. Kethvar stared at the blank screen for a long moment, then turned to his tactical officer. "Sensor sweep. Full spectrum. Maximum resolution. I want to know about every energy signature, every technological reading, every possible threat on that planet." The minutes ticked by as the most advanced sensors in the galaxy probed Earth from orbit. Slowly, impossibly, the readings began to change. What had appeared to be primitive industrial facilities were revealing themselves as something else entirely. The massive underground complexes weren't mines or bunkers. They were something the Imperial computers couldn't even classify. The energy readings from the polar regions spiked off the charts, suggesting power generation capabilities that rivaled entire Imperial worlds. "Sir," the sensor operator said, his voice tight with disbelief. "I'm reading massive gravitational distortions beneath the planet's surface. Whatever they've built down there, it's using technologies we don't recognize. And, sir, the energy signatures are increasing." Admiral Kethvar felt a sensation he hadn't experienced in centuries of warfare: uncertainty. How is this possible? Our intelligence reports showed no advanced technology. "Because, Admiral," came a new voice from the communication system, "your intelligence reports showed you exactly what we wanted them to show." The voice belonged to a different human. This one, wearing what appeared to be a military uniform covered in colorful ribbons and insignia. "General Sarah Martinez, United Earth Defense Force. And, before you ask, yes, we've been listening to your internal communications for the past hour. Quantum entanglement is a wonderful thing once you figure out how to weaponize it." The implications hit Kethvar like a physical blow. If the humans could intercept Imperial communications in real time, they had already breached some of the Empire's most advanced security systems. "General Martinez," the Admiral said, forcing his voice to remain steady. "You speak of deception and hidden technologies, but the facts remain unchanged. You face 300 Imperial warships. Even if your capabilities are greater than we initially believed, you cannot possibly stand against the combined might of this armada." 300 ships, Martinez repeated thoughtfully. "Yes, that does sound like quite a lot. Tell me, Admiral, how many worlds has the Empire conquered with fleets that size?" "Thousands. And how many of those worlds had advance warning that you were coming?" Ketval posted. The Empire's usual tactic was to arrive without warning, demand immediate surrender, and attack before defenders could organize resistance. It was brutally effective precisely because it gave enemies no time to prepare. "None," he admitted. "Exactly. Admiral, you've given us something no other species in your Empire's history has ever had: time to get ready. 47 hours might not seem like much to you, but for a species that once built a global communications network in less than 50 years, it was more than enough." The general's image was joined by a tactical display showing Earth's surface. What had appeared empty 47 hours ago was now revealed to be anything but. Massive installations were powering up across every continent. Energy readings that made no sense according to Imperial physics, and, most unsettling of all, movement patterns that suggested millions of individual units deploying from hidden facilities. "You see, Admiral, while your Empire was perfecting energy weapons and shields, humans were perfecting something else entirely. We learned to harness quantum mechanics, not just for computers or communication, but for warfare itself. We learned to manipulate fundamental forces in ways your scientists never imagined. And, most importantly, we learned something your Empire never bothered with: how to make friends." "Friends? Oh yes. You didn't think Earth was the only world keeping secrets, did you? It turns out that when you spend 10,000 years crushing civilizations under your boot, some of those civilizations start looking for ways to fight back. They've been very helpful in understanding exactly how Imperial technology works, and, more importantly, how to make it stop working." Admiral Kethvar's 4 hands were now gripping the command rail, so tightly his claws were leaving marks in the metal. "You're bluffing. Even if everything you say is true, we have enough firepower to crack your planet's crust. We can destroy you from a distance that makes any ground-based defenses irrelevant." General Martinez smiled, and it was the same unsettling expression Director Chun had worn earlier. "Admiral, you still don't understand. We're not planning to fight your ships." "Then what?" The rest of the Admiral's question was cut off as every screen in the Imperial Command Center flickered and went dark. Emergency lighting activated as the ship's main power systems fluctuated wildly. Throughout the Armada, similar scenes were playing out as 300 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy suddenly found themselves operating on backup power. "Admiral," came General Martinez's voice through the emergency communication system, somehow still functioning when everything else had failed. Allow me to introduce you to the concept of quantum resonance disruption. Your ship's power cores all operate on the same fundamental principles, using exotic matter reactions contained within quantum field bottles. Very efficient, very powerful, and, as it turns out, very vulnerable to a specific type of quantum interference. The lights flickered back on, but Admiral Kethvar could see warning indicators flashing throughout the command center. His weapons officer was frantically working at his console, trying to bring the plasma cannons back online. "This is impossible," Kethvar breathed. "Our power cores are shielded against any known form of interference." Any known form, yes. But, Admiral, humans have a saying, there are known unknowns and unknown unknowns. Today, you're discovering that there were quite a few unknown unknowns in your understanding of quantum physics. Systems throughout the Armada began coming back online, but slowly, and with warning indicators suggesting that the quantum field bottles containing their exotic matter fuel were highly unstable. It was a masterful demonstration. The humans had shown they could disable the entire Imperial fleet without firing a single shot, but they had also allowed the systems to recover, proving it wasn't a permanent effect. "Yet, you have our attention," Admiral Kethvar said grimly. "What do you want?" "What do we want?" General Martinez laughed, and there was no humor in it. "Admiral, we want what every species you've conquered wanted, to be left alone. The difference is that we have the ability to enforce that desire." The tactical display updated again, showing energy readings from across Earth's surface that were now off any scale the Imperial sensors could measure. Whatever the humans had been building during their 70 years of preparation, it was drawing power from sources that defied Imperial understanding of physics. "Admiral, your empire has ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years through fear and superior technology. Today, you discover what happens when you encounter a species that has superior technology of their own, and absolutely no fear of using it." Through the viewing portal, Kethvar could see strange lights beginning to appear in Earth's atmosphere. Not the bright flashes of weapon discharges, but slow, steady glows that seemed to be building in intensity. Whatever the humans were powering up down there, it was something the Empire had never encountered before. "This is your last chance for peaceful withdrawal," General Martinez said. "Leave our system now, return to your empire, and report that Earth is not available for conquest. We have no interest in expanding beyond our solar system, but we also have no intention of becoming part of your empire. And if we refuse..." The lights in Earth's atmosphere suddenly flared brighter, and every ship in the Imperial Armada shuddered as something passed through them, something that made the whole plating vibrate at frequencies that shouldn't have been possible. "Admiral," General Martinez said quietly, "if you refuse, then you're about to learn why every species in this galaxy should be very grateful that humans prefer peace to war. Because when we do go to war, we don't just fight to win. We fight to make sure the fight never has to happen again." The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Kethvar staring at a dead screen and contemplating a situation that had no precedent in Imperial history. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Zephyrian Empire faced an opponent that was not afraid of them. More than that, they faced an opponent that seemed to possess technologies that could neutralize Imperial advantages. But what truly terrified the Admiral was the growing realization that everything the humans had shown them so far was almost certainly just a demonstration. If they could disrupt quantum field containment and manipulate fundamental forces in ways Imperial science couldn't explain, what else could they do? He was about to find out. Below them, Earth continued its slow rotation, no longer looking like a peaceful blue marble. Now it looked like what it truly was: the home of a species that had spent decades preparing for this exact moment. The lights in the atmosphere were growing brighter, and Admiral Kethvar had the distinct feeling that his armada was about to become the first Imperial fleet in history to discover that there were still some fights in the galaxy they couldn't win. The question was whether any of them would survive long enough to report that discovery to the Empire. Admiral Kethvar made a decision that would have been unthinkable an hour earlier. He was going to retreat. Not because the Empire feared any primitive species, but because he needed to understand what they were truly facing before committing his entire armada to what might be a trap. All ships, prepare to withdraw to minimum safe distance, he commanded. Sir, his weapons officer protested. We haven't even attempted to engage the enemy. The Empire does not retreat from primitives. Lieutenant, if you can explain to me how primitives manage to destabilize our quantum field containment from the surface of a planet, I'll be happy to press the attack. Until then, we're pulling back to reassess. But as the Imperial ships began to move away from Earth, something extraordinary happened. The lights in the planet's atmosphere suddenly intensified, and every ship in the Armada found itself locked in place by forces that registered on no Imperial sensor. They weren't being held by tractor beams or gravitational manipulation, technologies the Empire understood. Instead, their ships were simply frozen in space by something that seemed to affect the fabric of reality itself. Admiral, his navigator called out in panic. Our engines are non-responsive. We're detecting massive space-time distortions throughout the area. It's like the universe itself is preventing us from moving. Through the communication system, General Martinez's voice returned, now joined by several other human voices speaking in different languages. Admiral, I'm afraid we can't let you leave just yet. You see, we've learned quite a bit about Imperial tactics over the years. You like to retreat, regroup, and return with larger forces. We can't allow that to happen. What have you done to our ships? Ketvar demanded. We've introduced you to the concept of localized space-time manipulation. Came a new voice, this one with an accent the Imperial computers identified as originating from the North American continent. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Theoretical Physics Division. What you're experiencing is a controlled alteration of the quantum foam that makes up the underlying structure of space-time itself. Think of it as editing the source code of reality in your immediate vicinity. Admiral Kethvar's scientific training, extensive as it was, couldn't process what he was hearing. The Empire had mastered faster-than-light travel, exotic matter manipulation, and energy weapons that could destroy stars. But altering space-time itself? That was beyond theoretical, even for Imperial science. Impossible, he said. The energy requirements alone would exceed the output of entire star systems. Would they? Dr. Vasquez replied. Admiral, your empire has spent 10 millennia perfecting brute force solutions to technological problems. More energy, bigger weapons, stronger materials. But humans approach problems differently. We ask, what if there's an easier way? The tactical display in the Imperial Command Center began showing readings that made no sense. The space around Earth was displaying properties that violated fundamental laws of physics as the Empire understood them. Gravity was flowing in directions that shouldn't exist. Time itself seemed to be moving at different rates in different locations. And somehow all of this was being controlled and directed by the planet below. You see, Dr. Vasquez continued, when we realized we weren't alone in the universe, we didn't just prepare weapons and defenses. We asked ourselves a fundamental question. What if the universe itself could be our weapon? Sub-Admiral Veltar, Kethvar said quietly, get me a direct communication line to Imperial High Command. Priority, emergency. Sir, I've been trying for the past 10 minutes. Our long-range communications are non-functional. Whatever they're doing to local space-time is preventing faster-than-light transmissions from leaving this system. The Admiral felt another sensation he wasn't familiar with, helplessness. Not only were his ships trapped, but the Empire wouldn't even know what had happened to them. For all practical purposes, the most powerful armada in Imperial history had simply vanished. General Martinez, he said, what do you want from us? Right now, we want you to listen and learn. Admiral, your empire controls thousands of worlds, but how much do you actually know about the species you've conquered? Before Kethvar could answer, the main viewer activated again, showing not human faces this time, but something else entirely. Beings that looked like crystalline spiders spoke in harmonics that the Imperial translators recognized as the language of the Kithira, a species the Empire had conquered 800 years ago. Then came the distinctive biomechanical implants of the Hegemony Collective, supposedly extinct for 2 millennia, followed by the energy beings of the Nexus states who had been enslaved and used as living power sources for Imperial technology. "Allow us to introduce ourselves properly," General Martinez said. "The United Earth Defense Council, in partnership with the Free Galaxy Coalition. Turns out, Admiral, that when you spend 10,000 years making enemies, some of those enemies start working together." The implications crashed over Admiral Kethvar like a tsunami. The Empire's intelligence services had detected no signs of organized resistance, no evidence of surviving remnants from conquered civilizations, no indication that anyone was actively working against Imperial interests. If this coalition was real, it meant the Empire's understanding of their own controlled territories was catastrophically flawed. "The Kithira have been teaching us crystalline technology," continued a voice that the translators identified as belonging to one of the spider-like beings. "Their ability to grow computational matrices at the molecular level allowed us to build the quantum processors needed for space-time manipulation." Another voice, this one definitely not human, added, "The Hegemony shared their biomechanical integration techniques. Human creativity combined with our distributed processing capabilities proved most effective for solving complex physics problems." And the Nexus states said what sounded like pure energy, speaking directly to their minds, "Taught your species how to harness quantum foam fluctuations as a power source. No longer do we exist merely to fuel Imperial machines." Admiral Kethvar realized with growing horror that his armada wasn't just facing Earth. They were facing a coalition of species that the Empire believed it had completely dominated, armed with technologies that combined the best capabilities of dozens of civilizations, all focused on a single goal: ending Imperial rule. "How?" he asked. "Our monitoring systems would have detected any collaboration between conquered species." "Would they?" General Martinez replied. "Admiral, human history is filled with resistance movements that operated under the noses of occupying powers. We're very good at hiding things we don't want found. And when we shared those techniques with species who had been practicing passive resistance for centuries, well, the results were impressive." Dr. Vasquez's voice rejoined the conversation. "The monitoring stations the Empire placed in conquered systems? We've been feeding them false data for decades. Your intelligence reports show you what we want you to see. Your species is incredibly advanced, but you're not very imaginative. You look for threats that resemble your own technology, so we made sure to never develop anything that looked familiar." The tactical display updated again, this time showing energy readings from across the galaxy. Dozens of systems that Imperial records listed as completely pacified were now revealing the same types of exotic energy signatures that were emanating from Earth. The scope of the deception was staggering. "Admiral," came a new voice, speaking in perfect Imperial standard, Resistance Coordinator Zeftal of the Free Zephyrian Republic. Kethvar's 4 hearts nearly stopped. That voice belonged to a member of his own species, speaking from somewhere within what should have been the secure heart of the Empire. "Yes, Admiral, there are those among your own people who grow tired of 10 millennia of conquest and oppression. We are not all content to serve an empire built on the bones of the innocent." "Traitor," Kethvar hissed. "Liberator," the voice corrected. "Admiral, did you know that your empire keeps detailed records of every species it has conquered? Biological data, cultural information, technological capabilities, population numbers before and after Imperial occupation? I've spent considerable time studying those records." The main viewer displayed a series of images that made Admiral Kethvar's scaled skin crawl. Statistical charts showing population reductions of 90% or more across hundreds of worlds. Cultural archives listing entire languages, art forms, and belief systems marked as terminated. Technological databases describing innovations that were destroyed rather than integrated into Imperial society. 10,000 years, Admiral. 10,000 years of systematic genocide, cultural destruction, and technological suppression. Your empire doesn't just conquer worlds, it erases them, turns vibrant civilizations into uniform factory planets populated by broken slaves. The empire brings order and prosperity, Kethvar began. The empire brings death, Coordinator Zeftal interrupted. And, Admiral, today that ends. The lights in Earth's atmosphere suddenly flared to blinding intensity, and every ship in the Imperial Armada shuddered as something fundamental changed around them. The space-time distortions that had been holding them in place intensified, but now they were doing something else as well. Reality itself was being rewritten in ways that made Imperial physics look like primitive mathematics. Dr. Vasquez, General Martinez said, "Please explain to the Admiral what's happening to his fleet." "Certainly. Admiral, your ships are currently experiencing controlled dimensional phase shifting. We're gradually moving you out of normal space-time and into what we call a diplomatic pocket dimension. Think of it as a specialized conference room where we can have a proper conversation without any risk of violence." "What does that mean?" Ketvar demanded. "It means that your ships are being temporarily removed from the standard universe. You can't leave, you can't call for help, and your weapons can't affect anything in normal space. But don't worry, you're perfectly safe. We're not here to destroy you, Admiral. We're here to educate you." The viewing portal showed Earth falling away as the Imperial Armada was somehow moved to a place that existed outside normal space. Stars became strange geometries, and the laws of physics clearly no longer applied in familiar ways. Yet the ships continued to function, their life support systems worked normally, and their crews remained unharmed. "Welcome," General Martinez said, "to humanity's first diplomatic initiative. Admiral, you and your fleet are about to become students in a very exclusive school. You're going to learn about the civilizations your empire destroyed, the technologies your people dismissed as impossible, and the future that awaits a galaxy free from Imperial rule." The main viewer now displayed a three-dimensional map of known space, but with details no Imperial chart had ever shown. Thousands of worlds marked not as conquered territories, but with their original names, their native species, their unique contributions to galactic civilization before Imperial occupation. "This is the galaxy as it should be," Dr. Vasquez explained. "A community of diverse civilizations sharing knowledge and resources, exploring the universe together instead of destroying each other. Your empire had the power to create something beautiful, Admiral. Instead, you chose to create a monument to fear and hatred. And now, added Coordinator Zeftal, we choose to create something better. The question, Admiral Kethvar, is whether you and your fleet want to be part of that future, or whether you prefer to remain trapped in this pocket dimension as living museum exhibits of Imperial arrogance." Admiral Kethvar stared at the impossible vista surrounding his ships and realized that everything he thought he knew about the galaxy was wrong. The Empire wasn't the pinnacle of civilization. It was a cancer that had been slowly strangling the true potential of hundreds of species. And now, somehow, those species had found a way to fight back using technologies and tactics that made Imperial power look primitive. But what truly terrified him was the growing understanding that this had all been planned. Not just for years or decades, but for centuries. Every Imperial victory had been secretly observed, analyzed, and countered. Every technological advancement had been matched and exceeded by the hidden coalition. The Empire hadn't been ruling the galaxy. They'd been living in a carefully constructed illusion while their former victims prepared to tear down everything they had built. The war for the galaxy's future hadn't begun when the Imperial Armada arrived at Earth. It had begun 10,000 years ago with the first Imperial conquest, and now, finally, it was coming to an end. The only question was what would rise from the Empire's ashes. Admiral Kethvar had commanded fleets for over 2 centuries, conquered 47 worlds personally, and never once questioned the righteousness of Imperial rule. Now, suspended in a pocket dimension created by species his empire had dismissed as primitive. He was being forced to confront uncomfortable truths about the civilization he had served his entire life. "Admiral," General Martinez said, her voice carrying through whatever impossible medium allowed communication in this strange space. "We're going to show you something no Imperial citizen has ever seen. The real cost of your empire's expansion." The three-dimensional display that had shown galactic charts now shifted to something more personal. Individual planets appeared, rotating slowly, each accompanied by detailed information about their native species, cultures, and civilizations. But these weren't sterile Imperial conquest reports. These were intimate portraits of living societies, their art, their music, their philosophies, their dreams. "This is Kairos Prime," Dr. Vasquez explained as a beautiful world of floating cities appeared in the display. Home to the Etherean civilization. They were artists and philosophers who had achieved perfect harmony between technology and nature. Their cities floated in their planet's upper atmosphere, powered by wind currents and solar collection systems that had zero environmental impact. Admiral Kethvar recognized the world from Imperial records. It was now a mining facility, its atmosphere stripped away to access mineral deposits, its floating cities long since crashed into the barren surface below. Their art form was called emotion sculpting, continued a voice that the translators identified as Etherean. "We could create three-dimensional construct from pure feeling, allowing others to experience our emotions directly. It was our greatest gift to the galaxy, the ability to truly understand what another being felt. Your empire," the voice continued with infinite sadness, "declared emotion sculpting a security risk. Too much potential for emotional manipulation. Our artists were killed, our sculptures destroyed, our techniques forbidden. An entire form of expression that took 50,000 years to develop was erased in a single day." The display shifted to another world, this one covered in vast crystalline forests that seemed to sing with harmonic frequencies. "The resonance gardens of Symphonia," a musical voice explained. "Our civilization grew cities from living crystal that responded to sound and emotion. Each citizen's daily activities created unique musical compositions as they moved through our crystalline neighborhoods. We were building a planet-wide symphony that would have taken millennia to complete." Kethvar remembered this world too. Imperial mining operations had harvested the crystal formations for use in communications equipment. The musical forests were gone, replaced by efficient extraction facilities. "Your people," the symphonian voice continued, "found our music distracting to Imperial efficiency. You silenced an entire world because our joy inconvenienced your schedules." The examples continued, world after world, each representing a unique contribution to galactic civilization that the Empire had destroyed not out of necessity, but out of a systemic inability to tolerate diversity. The Empire didn't just conquer worlds, it homogenized them, turning countless unique civilizations into identical copies of Imperial society. "Do you understand now, Admiral?" Coordinator Zeftal asked. "This is why we resist. Not because we oppose order or progress, but because your empire's definition of order requires the death of everything beautiful and unique in the galaxy." "But you're showing me the past," Admiral Kethvar said, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "These civilizations are gone. What's the purpose of gone?" General Martinez interrupted. "Admiral, who told you they were gone?" The display shifted again, but now was showing something impossible. The floating cities of Kairos Prime were there, restored and thriving. The resonance gardens of Symphonia were singing again, their crystal forests growing in impossible harmony. World after world that Imperial records listed as fully integrated were shown in their original glory, their native species living and working and creating as they had before Imperial conquest. "You see, Admiral Dar," Vasquez explained, "while your empire was perfecting the art of destruction, we've been perfecting the art of preservation. Every species you thought you had eliminated, we saved. Every culture you believed you had erased, we preserved. Every technology you dismissed as useless, we developed and improved. Impossible qu'être visprit. Our monitoring stations would have detected. Your monitoring stations see what we want them to see, Coordinator Zeftal said. Admiral, the rebellion against your empire began the moment your ships first darkened alien skies. It just took us 10,000 years to become strong enough to reveal ourselves. The pocket dimension around the Imperial fleet began to shift and change, the strange geometries rearranging themselves into something resembling normal space. But the stars that appeared were wrong. Not the familiar constellations visible from Empire space, but something entirely different. Welcome, General Martinez said, to the real galaxy. The one that exists beyond Imperial sensors, beyond Imperial control, beyond Imperial understanding. Through the viewing portal, Admiral Kethvar saw something that redefined his understanding of the possible. Thousands of ships filled the space around them, but these weren't the utilitarian war vessels of the Empire. They were works of art that happened to be functional spacecraft. Crystalline ships that sang as they moved, biomechanical vessels that pulsed with living energy, constructs of pure light that defied conventional physics. The Free Galaxy Coalition, Dr. Vasquez announced. Representatives from every species your empire believed it had conquered. Turns out, Admiral, that when you systematically oppress creative civilizations for 10 millennia, they get very good at creative problem-solving. How many? Kethvar asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. How many ships? How many species? How many worlds that have joined the coalition? General Martinez consulted something off-screen. Admiral, every species your empire has ever encountered is here, including several thousand that you never found because we helped them hide. The implications were staggering. If every conquered species had secretly joined this rebellion, if thousands of undiscovered civilizations have been actively working against Imperial expansion, then the Empire's control over the galaxy was completely illusory. They had been ruling over carefully constructed puppet shows while the real civilizations operated beyond their perception. But why reveal yourselves now? Admiral Kethvar asked. If you've been preparing for 10,000 years, why act today? Because came a new voice, one that made the Admiral's scales freeze in terror. Today is the day the Empire dies. The voice belonged to Emperor HFY Sisval himself, speaking from what should have been the most secure location in Imperial space. But if he was in communication with this rebel coalition, then either the Imperial capital had fallen, or, Your Magnificence, Admiral Kethvar said, falling to his knees despite being alone in his command center. How are you? Why are you? Admiral, I am speaking to you from the Imperial throne chamber on Zephyrus Prime, where I have just signed the formal dissolution of the Zephyrian Empire. As of this moment, all Imperial forces are ordered to stand down and prepare for peaceful transition to the new galactic government. The Admiral's world shattered completely. But, sire, the Empire has ruled for 10,000 years. The strength of our fleets, the loyalty of our citizens, the power of our technology were all illusions, Admiral. Carefully maintained illusions that allowed the coalition to prepare for this day without interference. Did you really believe that in 10,000 years of conquest, we never encountered a single species capable of effective resistance? Or did you consider the possibility that they were simply better at hiding their preparations than we were at detecting them? Through the communication system, General Martinez spoke again. Admiral, your Emperor approached us 6 months ago through Coordinator Zeftal. Turns out that even Imperial leaders can grow tired of being the galaxy's villains. His Magnificence will be retiring to a peaceful world of his choosing, and the Empire will be replaced by the Galactic Cooperative Council. The transition will take time, Dr. Vasquez added. Imperial citizens will need to learn to live as equals rather than conquerors. Imperial technology will be adapted for peaceful purposes rather than military domination. And Imperial history will be rewritten to acknowledge the true cost of 10 millennia of oppression. What about my fleet? Kethvar asked. My cruise, that, General Martinez said, depends on you. Admiral, we're not interested in revenge. We're interested in building a better future. Your ships and crews are welcome to join the Cooperative Council as equals. Your knowledge and experience will be valuable in helping other Imperial forces transition to peaceful roles. Or, Coordinator Zeftal added, you can remain in this pocket dimension as a living museum of Imperial arrogance. The choice is yours, Admiral. But understand that the old ways are finished. The Empire is over. The galaxy moves forward now without you. Admiral Kethvar looked around his command center, at the officers who had served under him for decades, at the displays showing technologies that had once seemed invincible, but were now revealed as primitive compared to what the Coalition had achieved. Everything he had believed about Imperial superiority, about the righteousness of conquest, about the necessity of enforcing order through fear, all of it crumbling in the face of evidence he could no longer deny. If I agree to this transition, he said slowly, what guarantee do I have that my people will be treated fairly? The Empire has wronged your species for 10,000 years. Why should you show us mercy? General Martinez was quiet for a long moment before answering. Admiral, do you know what humans were doing 10,000 years ago when your empire began its expansion? According to our records, you were primitive hunter-gatherers with no technology beyond basic tools. We were, she agreed. And do you know what we've learned in the time since then? We've learned that the strongest civilizations aren't built on fear and domination. They're built on cooperation and mutual respect. We've learned that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. And, most importantly, we've learned that the cycle of violence only ends when someone chooses to be better than their enemies. The Coalition could have destroyed your entire armada the moment you entered this system, Dr. Vasquez added. We could have eliminated the Empire through stealth and assassination decades ago. We could have turned your own weapons against your worlds and given you a taste of the destruction you've inflicted on others. But we didn't. Do you know why? Admiral Kethvar shook his head. Because we're trying to build a galaxy where problems are solved through cooperation rather than violence. A place where different species can coexist without one dominating all the others. A civilization based on the idea that the universe is big enough for everyone. The pocket dimension around the Imperial fleet began to shift again, and gradually, normal space-time reasserted itself. They were back in Earth's solar system, but now they weren't alone. The Coalition fleet that had been invisible before was now revealed in all its impossible glory. Thousands of ships representing hundreds of species, all working together toward a common goal. Admiral, General Martinez said, we're offering your people something the Empire never offered anyone else, a choice. Join us as equals in building something better, or return to Imperial space and try to maintain the old ways. But understand that if you choose the latter, you'll be doing it alone. The galaxy has moved beyond the need for empires. Admiral Kethvar stood slowly, his four arms hanging at his sides as he contemplated a decision that would affect not just his own future, but the future of everyone under his command. The empire that had defined his entire existence was gone, replaced by something that challenged every assumption he had ever held about power, order, and civilization. But as he looked at the impossible fleet surrounding his ships, species that should have been bitter enemies working together, technologies that should have been incompatible functioning in harmony, civilizations that should have been extinct thriving and growing, he began to understand what the Coalition was offering. Not just an end to war, but an end to the need for war. A galaxy where strength came from diversity rather than uniformity, where problems were solved through creativity rather than violence, where the measure of a civilization wasn't how many worlds it could conquer, but how many worlds it could help flourish. Sub-Admiral Veltar, he said finally. Yes, sir. Open a channel to all ships in the fleet. All Imperial forces under my command are hereby ordered to stand down and prepare for peaceful transition to the Galactic Cooperative Council. He paused, then added, and Transmit our formal request to join the coalition as equal partners in whatever comes next. Sir, Veltar asked, confusion clear in his voice. Admiral Kethvar, former Admiral Kethvar, turned to face his crew with something he had never felt before. Hope for a future that didn't require the destruction of others. Sub-Admiral, we've just learned that there's a better way to live among the stars. I suggest we take the opportunity to learn from species who never forgot that lesson. Through the communication system, he heard what sounded like celebration, not the grim satisfaction of military victory, but the genuine joy of people welcoming new friends to their community. For the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy was truly at peace.